The restaurant looked beautiful that night.
What kind of problem?
Soft
Is
yellow
everyone all
lights
right?
reflected
Oh, my
on
goodness, we
clean
need to
glass
evacuate.
tables. Quiet music played in the background while rich customers talked and laughed. Everything looked perfect from the outside. But for Daniel, it was just another long shift. Daniel worked as a waiter 6 nights a week. He moved quickly but carefully, making sure every plate was placed correctly and every customer felt comfortable. Most people never looked at his face. They only saw the uniform. To them, he was invisible. Still, Daniel always smiled. He believed kindness cost nothing. That evening started like any other. Orders came in fast. The kitchen was busy. Managers walked around, watching everything closely. Daniel carried drinks from one table to another, keeping his head down. Then the restaurant door opened. A man stepped inside, looking nervous. He wore an expensive coat, but his face showed confusion. He looked around as if he wasn't sure he belonged there. When the hostess spoke to him in English, he struggled to respond. His words were slow, broken. Some guests nearby began whispering. A few even laughed quietly. The man sat down, clearly uncomfortable. A waiter tried to take his order, but the conversation quickly became frustrating. The man repeated himself again and again, but nobody understood him properly. His face turned red with embarrassment. Daniel noticed from across the room. He hesitated for a moment. Then he walked toward the table. In a calm voice, Daniel spoke in German. The change was instant. The man's eyes widened in surprise. His shoulders relaxed. A smile slowly appeared on his face. He answered quickly, relieved to finally be understood. The tension around the table disappeared. They spoke for several minutes. Daniel explained the menu, suggested dishes, and even joked softly. The man laughed for the first time since entering the restaurant. Other staff members stared in shock. None of them knew Daniel spoke German. To them, he was just the quiet waiter who worked extra shifts. But someone else was watching carefully. In the far corner of the restaurant sat an older man in a simple dark suit. He didn't look important. No one paid attention to him. But his eyes followed Daniel the entire time. He watched how Daniel spoke. Not proudly, not to impress anyone, but simply to help. The old man noticed something others missed. Daniel treated the customer with respect, not because he had money, but because he was human. The dinner went smoothly after that. The German customer enjoyed his meal and thanked Daniel more than once. Before leaving, he shook Daniel's hand firmly. "You made this night easier," he said quietly. Daniel nodded and smiled. For him, it was just part of the job. The restaurant slowly became quieter as the night ended. Tables emptied one by one. Staff began cleaning and preparing to close. Daniel walked back to clear the table where the German customer had been sitting. That was when he noticed it. A folded ticket lay under the plate. At first, he thought it was just the bill. But when he picked it up, he felt something inside, thicker than paper. A note. Handwritten. Daniel frowned slightly. Customers sometimes left tips or thank you messages, but this felt different. He looked around, wondering who left it. That was when he felt it. Someone was still watching him. Daniel looked toward the corner table. The old man in the simple suit sat there quietly, his eyes calm, almost curious. For a moment, their eyes met. The man gave a small nod, then stood up and walked toward the exit without saying a word. Daniel looked back at the note in his hand. His heart beat faster, though he didn't know why. He opened it slowly, and the words inside made him freeze. The night that started like every other night was suddenly no longer normal. Daniel didn't know it yet, but this small moment was about to change his entire life. Daniel stood near the empty table, holding the folded note in his hand. The restaurant lights were already dimming. Chairs were being moved, and the sound of cleaning filled the air. But for a moment, everything around him felt quiet. He slowly opened the paper. The message inside was short. Kindness shows education. Meet me tomorrow if you want to change your life. Below the sentence was a phone number. Nothing else. No name. No company. Daniel read it again, confused. He looked toward the door where the old man had left, but he was already gone. "Daniel, you finished that table yet?" the manager called from behind. Daniel quickly folded the note and placed it in his pocket. "Yes, almost done," he replied. He tried to focus on work, but his mind kept returning to the message. Change your life. What did that even mean? Maybe it was just a strange joke from a rich customer. Still, Something about the old man's eyes felt serious. When the shift ended, Daniel walked home through cold night streets. The city was quieter now. Neon lights reflected on wet roads, and cars passed slowly. He pulled his jacket tighter and thought about the note again. His apartment was small. One bedroom, old furniture, and bills stacked neatly on the table. A photo of his mother stood near the window. She had been sick for months, and most of Daniel's salary went to medicine and rent. Dreams were expensive. Responsibility was not. Daniel sat down and stared at the note for a long time. Years ago, he studied languages at university. German, French, and a little Spanish. His teachers said he had talent. But when his father passed away, everything changed. School ended. Work began. Life moved forward without asking what he wanted. The next morning, Daniel almost threw the note away. People like him didn't get life-changing chances. That only happened in movies. But curiosity stayed in his mind all day. At work, whispers started spreading. "Did you see Daniel last night?" One waiter said quietly. "Yeah, acting like some translator or something." Another replied with a laugh. Daniel pretended not to hear, but he felt the difference. Suddenly, people noticed him, and not in a friendly way. During lunch break, his manager called him into the office. "That man you spoke to last night," the manager said carefully. "Do you know who he was sitting with?" Daniel shook his head. The manager sighed. "You should be careful. Important people come here. Don't get too comfortable." The warning felt strange. Daniel had only helped a customer. That evening, after his shift ended, Daniel stood outside the restaurant holding his phone. The number was still saved on the screen. His thumb hovered over the call button. He hesitated. What if it was nothing? What if it was everything? Finally, he pressed call. The phone rang once. A calm voice answered. "I was wondering when you would call." Daniel swallowed. "Sir, you left a note for me." "Yes," the voice replied. "Because you did something rare. You treated a stranger with respect when nobody else cared." There was a short pause. "Come tomorrow morning," the man continued. He gave an address in the city center, an area Daniel only knew from passing buses and tall glass buildings. The call ended quickly. Daniel stood still, staring at his phone. His heart beat faster than before. He didn't know what waited for him there, but he felt something shifting in his life. What Daniel didn't know was that someone inside the restaurant had seen him make that call, and they were not happy. From across the street, a coworker watched silently, his expression cold. Opportunities were rare, and sometimes people did not want others to have them. Daniel folded the note again and placed it safely in his pocket. Tomorrow would be different. He just didn't know how different yet. The next morning, Daniel woke up earlier than usual. He barely slept. The note stayed on the table beside his bed all night, as if reminding him that something important was waiting. He wore his cleanest shirt, even though it was old. The city center felt different from his neighborhood. Tall buildings touched the sky, and people walked fast, dressed in expensive suits. Daniel fell out of place, but he kept walking until he reached the address. A quiet glass building stood in front of him. For a moment, he thought about turning back. But then he remembered his mother's tired smile and the years he had spent putting his dreams aside. He took a deep breath and walked inside. The office was calm and silent. A receptionist greeted him politely and asked him to wait. Everything looked expensive but simple. No loud decorations, just quiet confidence. After a few minutes, the old man from the restaurant appeared. Up close, he looked even calmer than before. His movements were slow but confident. He smiled slightly when he saw Daniel. "You came," he said. Daniel nodded. "I wasn't sure if I should." The old man gestured toward his office. "People who are not sure usually don't come. That already tells me something." They sat down. For a moment, neither spoke. The old man studied Daniel carefully, not in a judging way, but as if trying to understand him. "Do you know why I called you here?" he asked. Daniel shook his head. "Because you didn't try to impress anyone last night," the man said. "You simply helped someone who needed help." Daniel looked confused. "I was just doing my job." The man smiled. "No, you were showing character." He introduced himself simply as Mr. Keller. He didn't mention money or business, but Daniel slowly realized this was not an ordinary man. The office walls held photos with world leaders and international events. This man was important. Mr. Keller leaned back in his chair. Tell me about yourself, Daniel. Not your work. Your story. Daniel hesitated. He wasn't used to people asking about his life. But something about the man's calm voice made it easier to speak. He talked about university, about studying languages, about how his father's sudden death forced him to leave school, about working long hours to support his mother, about choosing responsibility instead of dreams. Mr. Keller listened without interrupting. When Daniel finished, the room stayed quiet for a few seconds. You know, Mr. Keller said softly, I also started with nothing. Daniel looked surprised. I cleaned offices at night when I was young, the old man continued. People ignored me too, but I watched, learned, and waited. He leaned forward slightly. Talent is common, Daniel. Character is rare. Daniel didn't know what to say. Then Mr. Keller made an unexpected offer. He needed someone who understood languages and people, someone who could help during meetings with international guests. Not a permanent job yet, just a trial opportunity. Daniel's heart raced. This was more than he ever expected. I don't have a degree, Daniel said honestly. Mr. Keller smiled. Last night, you showed me something more valuable. Hope slowly replaced doubt inside Daniel. But the moment didn't last long. When Daniel returned to the restaurant later that afternoon, the atmosphere felt different. Conversation stopped when he walked by. His manager called him into the office immediately. The manager's face was serious. Money is missing from the tip box, he said coldly. And your name came up. Daniel froze. What? I didn't take anything. The manager crossed his arms. Then explain why people saw you near it. Daniel felt his stomach drop. He knew this wasn't random. Someone wanted trouble. The opportunity he just received suddenly felt fragile. If this accusation stayed, everything could disappear before it even began. As Daniel left the office, he noticed a coworker watching him from across the room. The same one who had seen him make the phone call the night before. The look on his face said everything. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was planned. Daniel clenched his hands, realizing that sometimes the hardest part of moving forward was the moment others try to pull you back. And now, he had to decide whether to fight or walk away. The accusation spread through the restaurant faster than Daniel expected. By the time he stepped back onto the floor, everyone seemed to know. Conversations stopped when he walked past. Some coworkers avoided eye contact. Others whispered behind his back. Daniel felt the weight of their silence. He wanted to defend himself loudly, to explain that he had done nothing wrong. But something inside him told him to stay calm. Losing control would only make things worse. The manager called him again before the dinner rush began. Until we figure this out, the manager said, you won't handle payments or tips. The words felt like punishment, even without proof. Daniel nodded quietly. I understand. Inside, frustration burned. He had worked there for years without a single complaint. Now suddenly, trust disappeared. That night felt longer than any other shift. Customers smiled and laughed while Daniel carried plates with heavy thoughts in his mind. Every small mistake felt dangerous. Every glance felt like judgment. But Daniel kept working. He didn't argue. He didn't accuse anyone. He simply did his job the way he always had. Across the city, Mr. Keller received a phone call about the situation. One of his assistants had heard rumors from the restaurant manager. The assistant expected Mr. Keller to step in immediately. But Mr. Keller refused. Not yet, he said calmly. Instead of helping Daniel directly, he decided to watch. He wanted to see how Daniel handled pressure when nobody protected him. Because real character showed itself in difficult moments. The next day, the manager called a short meeting. The missing money still hadn't been found. Suspicion hung in the air like a storm waiting to break. Daniel spoke only once. Please check the cameras, he said calmly. They will show the truth. Some coworkers exchanged nervous looks. Later that afternoon, security footage was reviewed. The truth appeared clearly on the screen. Another employee had taken money from the tip box while pretending to organize receipts. The room fell silent. The manager's expression changed immediately. Embarrassment replaced suspicion. He apologized quickly, but the damage had already been done. Daniel simply nodded. He didn't demand an apology. He didn't point fingers. He just returned to work. But someone else noticed this reaction. Mr. Keller. He had quietly arranged for the footage to reach him as well. What interested him was not the accusation itself. It was Daniel's response. Most people would have reacted with anger or revenge. Daniel chose dignity. That evening, after the restaurant closed, Daniel received a message. Dinner tomorrow. Formal event. Be ready. It was from Mr. Keller. Daniel stared at the message, unsure what it meant. He had expected the opportunity to disappear after the accusation. Instead, something bigger seemed to be coming. The next night, Daniel arrived at a large hotel ballroom. Expensive cars lined the entrance. People in suits and elegant dresses moved confidently through the doors. Daniel felt nervous again. This world still felt unfamiliar. Inside, Mr. Keller greeted him with a small smile. Tonight, he said quietly, I want you to observe. Listen more than you speak. Daniel nodded, not realizing this was another test. During the dinner, business leaders from different countries discussed a major international deal. Conversations became tense as misunderstandings grew between partners who spoke different languages and came from different cultures. Daniel watched carefully. He noticed something others missed. The problem wasn't the deal. It was the way people misunderstood each other's intentions. Mr. Keller glanced at Daniel, waiting. The moment had arrived. Daniel didn't know it yet, but what he said next could open doors or close them forever. And somewhere in the room, powerful people were already deciding whether he belonged there or not. The ballroom felt too large for Daniel. Crystal lights hung from the ceiling, and quiet conversations filled the air. Everyone looked confident, experienced, and important. Daniel stood near the back of the room, trying not to attract attention. He reminded himself why he was there. Observe. Listen. At the center table, business leaders from different countries discussed a major partnership. The conversation moved between English and German, sometimes switching too fast. Small misunderstandings slowly turned into tension. Voices became sharper. Smiles disappeared. Daniel noticed it immediately. The words were correct, but the meaning was wrong. One German investor spoke directly, as was normal in his culture, but the others felt offended by his tone. They thought he was being rude. The atmosphere became uncomfortable. The deal began to fall apart. Mr. Keller watched silently. He didn't interrupt. Instead, he looked at Daniel. It was a quiet signal. Daniel hesitated for a moment. These were powerful people. One wrong word could embarrass him. But he remembered why he had come this far, not to stay invisible anymore. He stepped forward carefully. Excuse me, Daniel said calmly. I think there is a misunderstanding. The table turned toward him. Some faces showed surprise. Others showed doubt. To them, he looked too young, too ordinary. Daniel spoke in German first, explaining the emotional meaning behind the investor's words. Then he translated back into English, softening the tone without changing the message. He is not rejecting the idea, Daniel explained gently. He is showing concern because he wants the partnership to succeed. The room grew quiet. The German investor nodded quickly, relieved. The tension slowly disappeared. Conversations restarted, this time calmer. Within minutes, the discussion moved forward again. The deal was saved. Daniel stepped back, his heart beating fast. He wasn't sure if he had done the right thing. But Mr. Keller smiled. Later that evening, several guests approached Daniel to thank him. For the first time, people looked at him not as a waiter, but as someone valuable. Someone who understood more than just words. When the dinner ended, Mr. Keller walked beside him toward the exit. Tonight, the old man said, you didn't translate language. You translated people. Daniel felt proud, but also nervous. Success felt new and fragile. I just try to help, Daniel replied. Mr. Keller nodded. That is exactly why it worked. Outside, cool night air filled the street. Cars waited to take guests home. Daniel felt something changing inside him. For years, he believed his life would stay small. Now possibilities felt real. But success rarely comes without resistance. The next morning, Daniel returned to the restaurant for his regular shift. The atmosphere had changed again. This time, co-workers treated him differently. Some with respect, others with quiet jealousy. One waiter avoided him completely. During break time, Daniel received a message from an unknown number. Don't forget where you came from. He frowned, unsure what it meant. Before he could think more about it, another message arrived. A photo. It showed Daniel from years ago, standing outside his university building, holding papers with a worried expression. A memory he had tried to forget. Below the photo was another message. People should know why you really left school. Daniel's stomach tightened. That part of his past was painful. Debt, failure, and the shame of leaving before finishing. He had worked hard to move forward, to rebuild quietly. Now, someone wanted to drag it back into the light. Later that day, Mr. Keller called him into the office. The investors were impressed, he said. They want you involved in future meetings. Daniel should have felt happy. Instead, worry filled his mind. There's something you should know, Daniel said slowly. My past, it's not perfect. Mr. Keller looked at him calmly. No one's past is. But outside the office, rumors were already beginning to spread. Someone was sharing pieces of Daniel's old life, trying to turn success into doubt. Daniel realized something important in that moment. Getting an opportunity was only the beginning. Keeping it would be much harder. And somewhere, someone was waiting for him to make one mistake. The rumors started quietly. At first, it was only whispers during meetings. Small questions asked in careful voices. Someone mentioned Daniel's unfinished degree. Another spoke about old financial problems. The story slowly changed each time it was repeated, becoming worse than the truth. Daniel felt it happening around him. People who once smiled now watched him more closely. Some investors became distant. A few emails stopped coming. The opportunity that once felt exciting now felt fragile again. One evening, Daniel sat alone in his apartment, staring at his phone. Messages from unknown numbers continued to arrive. People like you don't belong there. Soon they will know everything. He turned the phone off, but the words stayed in his mind. For years, Daniel had tried to forget that part of his life. Leaving university had felt like failure. He remembered standing outside the campus building, holding unpaid bills, knowing he had no choice but to walk away. He told himself it was responsibility. But deep inside, it still felt like losing. The next day, Daniel met Mr. Keller at the office. The old man noticed immediately that something was wrong. You're quieter today, he said. Daniel hesitated, then finally spoke the truth. He explained everything. The debt, leaving school, the fear that people would stop trusting him once they knew. When he finished, he expected disappointment. Instead, Mr. Keller smiled softly. Do you know how many successful people started with failure? He asked. Daniel looked confused. I failed twice before my first company worked, Mr. Keller continued. People laughed at me. They said I wasn't serious enough. Failure is not the problem, Daniel. Hiding from it is. Daniel listened carefully. But investors may not see it that way, he said quietly. Mr. Keller nodded. That is why you must decide something today. He placed a folder on the table. Inside was a proposal for a new international project. A difficult one. High risk, but also high reward. The company needed someone who understood both language and people, someone who could build trust between different cultures. Mr. Keller looked directly at him. You can stay safe, he said. Continue assisting quietly. No pressure. No risk. He paused. Or you can lead this project. But if you do, your past will become public. People will judge you. Some will hope you fail. The room felt heavy. Daniel realized this was not just a job decision. It was a choice between fear and growth. That night, he walked through the city alone. Lights reflected on the streets, just like the night everything started. He remembered carrying plates in the restaurant, feeling invisible. Back then, he wanted only stability. Now, he had a chance for something more. But success meant exposure. It meant risk. He stopped near a restaurant window and saw his reflection. For a moment, he saw the same tired waiter he used to be. Then he remembered the dinner, the conversations he helped fix, the respect he had earned. Maybe failure didn't define him. Maybe giving up did. The next morning, Daniel returned to the office. Mr. Keller looked up, waiting for his answer. Daniel took a deep breath. His voice was calm, but firm. I'll do it, he said. I don't want to hide anymore. Mr. Keller smiled, not surprised. Good, he replied. Because leadership begins the moment you stop running from your story. But outside the office, news about Daniel's new role spread quickly. Not everyone celebrated. Some investors questioned the decision. Others watched closely, waiting for him to make a mistake. The pressure grew immediately. Daniel understood that this decision would either build his future or destroy everything he had worked for. And as the project officially began, he realized something else. This was never just about business. It was about proving that a second chance could be stronger than a perfect past. Months passed, and Daniel's life no longer looked the same. The international project was not easy. Long meetings, difficult negotiations, and constant pressure became part of his daily routine. Some investors continued to doubt him at first. They watched every decision carefully, waiting for proof that he did not belong. Daniel felt that pressure every day. But instead of hiding from it, he worked harder. He listened more than he spoke. He treated everyone with the same respect, from powerful executives to junior assistants. Slowly, people began to notice something different about him. He didn't try to sound important. He tried to understand people. The project started showing results. Partnerships improved. Misunderstandings decreased. Deals that once seemed impossible began moving forward. The same investors who once questioned him now asked for his opinion during meetings. Respect came quietly, but it stayed. One evening, after a long day at the office, Mr. Keller invited Daniel for dinner. Not at a luxury hotel or business hall, but at a familiar place. The same restaurant where everything had started. Daniel smiled when he walked inside. The lights, the music, even the arrangement of tables felt the same. But this time, things were different. The staff greeted him warmly. Some recognized him immediately. The young waiter who took his order looked nervous, just like Daniel once did. Daniel thanked him kindly, remembering how invisible he used to feel. They sat at the same corner table where Mr. Keller had watched him months ago. For a moment, neither spoke. "You know," Mr. Keller said finally, "most people think success begins with opportunity." Daniel looked at him. "But opportunity only reveals who you already are," the old man continued. Daniel thought about everything that had happened. The accusation, the rumors, the fear of failure, and the choice he made not to run from his past. "I almost didn't call that number," Daniel admitted quietly. Mr. Keller smiled. "I know." Daniel reached into his wallet and pulled out the old folded note. The paper was slightly worn now. He had carried it with him every day without realizing why. He opened it again. The same words stared back at him. Kindness shows education. For the first time, Daniel fully understood the meaning. The note was never about business or money. It was about being seen when nobody else was looking. About how small moments reveal true character. "You weren't testing my language skills," Daniel said slowly. Mr. Keller shook his head. "No, I was watching how you treated someone who could give you nothing in return." The restaurant felt warmer suddenly. Daniel realized that his life changed not because he spoke German that night, but because he chose kindness when it was easy to ignore someone. After dinner, Daniel stood near the entrance for a moment before leaving. He noticed the young waiter again, struggling to handle multiple tables while customers spoke impatiently. Daniel walked over and spoke gently, offering a small piece of advice. The waiter's face relaxed, grateful for the help. As Daniel stepped outside, cool night air filled his lungs. The city lights looked different now, not distant but reachable. He thought about the long journey from being ignored to being respected. Nothing had changed overnight. It happened through small choices, repeated again and again. Mr. Keller joined him outside. "Remember this," he said. "People will forget what you achieve, but they never forget how you make them feel." Daniel nodded. The note that once felt mysterious now felt simple. Kindness opened the door. Courage kept it open. And somewhere inside the restaurant, another young worker continued to shift, unaware that one small moment of respect could one day change his entire future, just like it had changed Daniel's. Respect, patience, and kindness can change a person's destiny when the world least expects it.